Hello, everybody. This is Elba Colón coming to you from Columbus, Ohio. I'm having a little technical difficulties today, but you know what? That makes it the show even better. Today's Gratitude Friday. I'm your hostess today. Today we'll have AmiLynne can't come on board from Colorado, and let's get the show going. See how I can add her in. Share live. Let's see. Okay, one moment, everyone. Okay, AmiLynne, I saw you there, but Facebook this is not working out. Okay, let's see. Let's try this again. It won't add you in for whatever reason. Okay, let's try this. Lynn, are you at your... Oh, wait a minute. I think you're coming. I see a camera up there. I see something. I see like a little picture of you. It's adding. Oh my God. She's coming. Oh, gotta love it. If you haven't, why don't we? No, it's adding. There you go.
Hello, love.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. Blessings to you. How are you today, love?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful.
Good.
I'm putting the volume up. So, my experience of the Gratitude Friday show, when there are technical difficulties, those are one of the best shows. Those are like top of the line shows, is what I come to
Ooh,
experience.
pressure.
Yeah, well, pressure, and you see how usually the interviews are side by side, whereas now you're in the corner. So for whatever reason, I couldn't get you side by side, and now I got you in the corner. And no, you can turn your phone. It was my end. It would not stay turned. So I was like, okay, so this is gonna be good. So
It is what we
it's
make
okay.
of it.
Right. So let me go ahead and start off from the top. So my name is Elba Colón, coming to you from Columbus, Ohio. For those who are watching all around the world, welcome to the Gratitude Friday Show. I'm a transformational mindset coach, facilitator, podcaster, and the whole point of the show is to awaken the gratitude in your life. And that is by bringing value, awareness, and love, and just honor, respect to gratitude and dig deeper. And so what I do here on this show is bring people like AmiLynne, whose life is a reflection of gratitude. And what they do is bring us the awareness. They bring us the value of gratitude. So go ahead, start liking this show. Go ahead, share this so that more people around the world get to be awakened to the gratitude that's in your life already. So AmiLynne, you are, I went to your website, more information about you, and I'm so amazed about what you have created. I hear some static. Is that me or is that you?
It's you.
Okay, so I'm telling you, this year's gonna be good. I'm starting to wish I did not wear any mascara because there's gonna be tears coming down here soon.
Tears of tears of gratitude.
Yeah, tears of gratitude is what it is. But AmiLynne, you are the founder of the Realization Academy. You're a speaker and you're an author, and you're a wonderful life coach, friend, and a wife. And I tell you what, I talked to you that last time for 2 hours on the phone, and I could go on and on. And just that conversation, I think the greatest thing I got from there is a lot of clarity, especially a lot of clarity around presence. And there's a fine, fine thread with gratitude with that. And so, with that experience I had with you, my hope that we'll be able to create that experience for others who are watching this show. So, thank you for coming on board. And so, let's start off with what does gratitude mean to you? And we'll work from there.
Ooh, I'm I used to be, well, first of all, Elba, thank you for the invite. And no matter the obstacles in getting here, we're here. So it really is, gratitude is a big part of my experience. And so I'm grateful to have this conversation with you and everyone else who's joining in, just for the simple fact of, I feel like sometimes gratitude is one of those buzzwords that, well, even so far as, there's the gratitude journals and there's gratitude exercises, and I don't diminish or dismiss any of those, but it's we need to go further than a gratitude journal. We need to go further than a gratitude exercise. So for me, gratitude is a feeling. It's less about the words, it's more about the feeling. And the truth of that is it comes back to, I had to get to know me so that I could understand what that feeling was when it showed up, as opposed to being confused or scared by it. Because gratitude is a really powerful feeling. It's a very powerful emotion. It's a very powerful energy, in my opinion. And so if you're disconnected from your personal identity, your spiritual identity, who you are as an individual, when that energy comes into your experience, it can be really scary if you're not sure what it is. It can be overwhelming when you think about it. And so then gratitude turns into these weird things of self-deprecation. Gratitude turns into things like interacting with others in ways that we wish we wouldn't, because we're trying to deflect. So for example, someone gives us a compliment. I'm going to give you a compliment. Or actually, let's turn it around for this example. Elba, you give me a compliment. And because I'm so disconnected from my own spiritual identity as who I am as an individual, my first reaction is to be demure and to deflect and to not own whatever idea, whatever compliment it is that you've shared with me. I'm not taking that in and receiving it, because I don't understand how it is actually a reflection of my true identity. So when we're expressing those gratitude points, for me, the first step is better understanding who we are individually as a person. And that's a hard journey. It's not who the magazines or the television or the podcasts. It's not finding someone that we appreciate and want to be like and then trying to emulate them. It's finding those qualities and characteristics that we appreciate in others and finding where they reside in our own experience. So that way, Elba, when you share a compliment with me and you say something nice about me, I'm able to say, thank you. Thank you is a way of showing gratitude. It's thank you. But, one of my favorite quotes about gratitude comes from John F. Kennedy. And he says, and I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. He says, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. And so in that space of gratitude, think for just a moment when you've shared a compliment with someone else and they deflected it. Now, contrast that with sharing a compliment with someone and they receive that. The feeling is very different for the person who's sharing the compliment. And the difference is a comfort and a knowledge of one's identity, being able to receive that compliment for what it is, nothing greater, nothing less, or feeling like you need to deflect it because you're not sure, you know, is that really what I'm reflecting? Am I really a pretty person? Do I really have a nice voice? You know, those type of things. So when we don't feel gratitude, it's because we feel disconnected from our spiritual identity as Spirit's expression, as God's expression, as an expression of this universe. So the first step to gratitude is really, truly, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, but is really, truly digging in and figuring out who I am as an individual, as a member of community, and ultimately what I'm finding is as an expression of Spirit. It's not who I am, it's what I am.
You know what? This is so powerful. So a couple of weeks ago, I took a training on a workshop called Grace. It's about embodiment of feeling of our emotions. And one of the great things I discovered about myself in that workshop is my heart's desire, which is to be like a mirror reflection to people so they can see what I see, which is the diamond, the beauty in them, the beautiful human being. And as you're talking, I'm just not imagining, but I'm just remembering about the compliments I've given and how were they received and how they were not received. And then I'm thinking about my own self when I receive compliments. Sometimes, yeah, when I am connected, all I could do when I receive a compliment is just like kind of like just honor them and just say thank you and just, you know, like this all I can do and receive. But then when I am disconnected, I can when I don't believe or receive the compliment, I'm thinking back, yeah, I was disconnected. Thinking back. And really, you're right. It has a lot to do with being connected with our spiritual being, like our spiritual self.
Yeah, because the question is, what did you feel disconnected from? Or what are you acknowledging a disconnection from? Because it's one thing, and it's pretty commonplace now for people to say, oh, well, I just feel so disconnected. You know, even go so far, I mean, let's get real or let's not play. Let's talk about individuals who are contemplating suicide. That is an individual who feels disconnected. And the belief would be is that they feel disconnected from community. They feel disconnected because they don't have a tribe. They feel disconnected because they don't feel heard. Well, and those things are all very important, but those things are all subsequent to us feeling connected with our own spiritual source, that spiritual being, that spiritual expression of who we are. When we are confident in our identity as God's child, and I think that's a universal concept across multi-faiths. I don't promote one faith or another, but the idea of being an expression of God as his or her child, when we are confident in that, there's not a sense of disconnection. There's really not even a sense of connection. To me, that's the myth. Oh, well, there's times I feel connected and times I feel disconnected. Well, to me, the myth is in the belief that there is a connection. We are but Spirit's expression. And an expression cannot be disconnected from its source. It's an impossibility. If I am expressing words, those words are of me. Without me, source, those words don't exist. So it's not attributing the idea to being disconnected. It's an it's an idea of coming back to understanding our identity as Spirit's expression. When we express love, when we express gratitude, which is a form of love, what we are doing is we're expressing Spirit, we're expressing universe, we're expressing source in those interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're recognizing our identity as that expression of source, spirit, God.
Mm-hmm.
When we're feeling disconnected, we're caught up in the ego. That's the egoic mind saying that we should be
Can you
someplace
just one
different.
more time? Can you say that one more time? When
When we
we're
when we feel disconnected, when the belief is one of disconnection, we are essentially aligning our thought with ego. We're
yeah,
allowing ego to be in control.
yeah.
And don't misunderstand me. My opinion would be is ego is really important. Ego is what allows us to see the beautiful creations of artists, whether it be in architecture or wall paintings or music. Ego is what helps to drive the actual sharing of those artistic creations. So ego
Mm-hmm.
has its place, but when we allow ego to be in the driving seat of our
Mm-hmm.
expression, of our experience, of our day-to-day interactions, that's not its role. And so things get
Mm-hmm.
twisted. And then gratitude becomes something that we feel like we have to share, we have to do because good people share gratitude, right? And if that's the feeling, if our sense is that we have to do it because it somehow is a reflection of who we are, that's ego. If we're sitting in an airport in a wheelchair, surrounded by thousands of people, and just grateful to be sitting there, no agenda, no reward, no need to even really express it, but just to feel it,
Yeah,
that's spirit.
yeah.
And there's no sense of disconnection. Ego wants us to believe that there's even a possibility that we can be disconnected from source. It's rubbish.
Mm.
It's not true. It's a misunderstanding of our identity, in my opinion. In my opinion.
Well, I like this opinion because it goes along with what I've been thinking a lot about lately. So a lot of people talk about letting go and surrender. And so I've been like observing that with my own self and just think back about letting go and surrender. And so I understand about letting go and then to surrender. But I maybe this could be ego as I'm talking out loud, but I just feel like if I'm going to let go of this, what am I going to surrender to? If I'm going to let go of this fear that I have to have, then I'm going to surrender to faith. If I'm going to let go of this hate that I have on unforgiveness, then I'm going to surrender to faith. And so it's like what you're saying. It sounds to me what it sounds like what you're saying here is that when we're not in gratitude, when we're not connected with who we are, with our full expression of what God looks like to us, then what are we surrendering to? And what's there left, which is ego.
Right. Well, and see, here's
Mhm.
the other thing too. I love the idea of surrender, and I've spent quite a bit of time swimming around with the idea of surrender. I tried to redefine it. I tried to see, because to me, I grew up in a space where surrender is weakness. You don't surrender because surrender is the white flag. You've given up. And
Oh, okay.
that for me was such a bad connotation. And I can imagine for many of your listeners, they've been raised in similar families. My family's not all that different from a standard American family. And it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't purposeful to instill this idea that surrender was necessarily a sign of weakness. However, what I got the opportunity to learn to do is surrender, this idea of letting go, for me, is the idea of actually restoring back to source what belongs to source. I hold on to stuff. We all do. So when we are surrendering, where's it go? That was always my question. Well, if I'm giving it up, because I believe in mass consciousness. I believe that our energies interact. And if I'm believing that I've got this negative energy and I'm letting go of it, I'm surrendering it, then where's it going? How is it impacting those around me? Well, if I can consciously say that I'm not letting go of it, I'm actually just not holding on to something that wasn't mine to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to take control. Source, spirit, God, call her what you will. To me, that letting go, that surrendering is really just an act of returning to source what was source's to begin with. Principle,
Yeah.
love, spirit, whatever you call that higher entity in your experience. Because we're suffering, we're at a point where we feel like we need to let go because we're trying to control something that's not ours to control to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So if I can recognize that step, I'm like, okay, well, who am I trying to take control from? What am I trying to take control from? It's spirit, it's God.
Yeah.
God is the navigator, God is the orchestrator, God is creator. So when I can just give that back to, and sometimes in my own mind, it's in my own experience, it's an actual physical activity. Like, okay, dear God, this is what I've been struggling with, and I'm giving it back to you. And sometimes I even have to, in my own experience, I have to write down the why I'm giving it back. It wasn't mine to begin with. I can't control it anyhow. Control is a myth. I'm reminding myself so that the next time I'm tempted to pick up that idea of controlling, that same thought, fear, trepidation, whatever it might be, I'm immediately reminded of those bullet points of why I gave it back to source to begin with. The first of which was, it isn't mine. And so then I can be grateful. This comes back to that idea of gratitude. I can feel the gratitude for whatever it is I'm sitting in because I know that it's spirit ordained. It's divinely ordained. If I am here, it's because the divine has called me to this moment. And if I can't be grateful for that, pish posh, what are we doing?
You know what? That's so beautiful because it's going back to letting go and surrender, restoring it, giving it back to source. And what does that leave us with? Like an open space.
Freedom.
And right, that open space of freedom, presence, and it gives like more space for, I don't want to sound like, for lack of better words, more space for more.
Right.
For more to do whatever we want or what we want to create, how we want to make a difference. I mean, just talking to you, like I just want to cry because yesterday we went to watch the Cleveland Browns play against the Jets because we are Jets fans, naturally, because we're New Yorkers, Puerto Ricans. And so yeah, the Jets lost. They were winning, and then the Jets were winning, then Browns caught up. But as we drove home, I realized we got to be part of that story. We got to be part of that history. We got to experience that. And I'm so in gratitude for that experience.
Right.
So
Disappointment. Right. When we take a situation like that, and I too am a football fan, and I'm a Jacksonville Jaguar fan. So I've been through, not what the Browns have been through, but I've been through the ringer the last couple seasons. But here's the thing is that when we return to source, what belongs to source, one of the things that it introduces to us, which is scary because we're not used to being in this space, is the idea of innocence. Because there's no guilt, there's no blame, there's no disappointment, there's no expectation, there's no agenda. Without those egoic qualities, we're left with purity. We're left with innocence. We're left with truth of just being and expressing. We can be sad that one team lost while being grateful and experiencing the excitement for the other team. And we're not used to that in the Western world. We're used to those emotions being zero-sum game emotions. If I am happy, like something has to be good. It can't be good and bad. It's good or bad. It's black or white. It's for me or it's not for me. And a number of years back, an amazing spiritual teacher, Elise Moore, she was coming in to do a lecture, and my husband and I were picking her up, and we had this amazing conversation in the car even before the lecture was had. And she was talking about the difference between and or. And we need to
Oh.
replace or with the word and. I can be disappointed that my team lost, and I can be happy for the winning team. They don't cancel each other out. And here's the thing is in that space, it opens up the idea, it opens up the space, as you said, for more. And part of that more is gratitude. I got to be there to experience the story. I got to see Mayford. Is it Mayford? Maywell? Oh.
Mayfield.
Mayfield. I knew it was May something. Yeah, this new young guy in the league. You can celebrate that and be grateful for his expression and his joy and his win. And it doesn't take anything away from the disappointment that the team that I, connect with might not have done as well today on the field as I would have liked him to anyhow. So when you're giving back in this space of and allowing life to simply just be as it shows up, it opens the door even more greatly for gratitude, genuine gratitude, not, this provocative, forceful, obligatory gratitude. Well, I need to be grateful that, they played a good game. No. I can be genuinely excited and happy for them, grateful, and I can be disappointed. And in that disappointment, I can be grateful that they showed progress. Again, I know the Browns, so I know the story. They had some amazing plays. When we create this black and white experience, it's in contrast and in contradiction to the way spirit is expressed, that the divine is expressed. And that's why we feel in conflict. Even when we're sad and disappointed about something, that sometimes it feels wrong to feel sad and disappointed. Well, that's because we feel like it should be an or thing. It's black or white. I should be happy or sad. Well, no, it's not okay for me to be disappointed or sad right now. I need to be happy because that's what the expectation is. Well, spirit doesn't have any of that expectation. Spirit says live. And by the way, my opinion would be is when we let spirit express spirit and not try to take control of that, we live more harmoniously because we're not trying to control things that aren't ours to control to begin with.
I was at the stadium, so they're the Cleveland Brown dogs in the dog pound.
In the dog pound?
So there was a lot of barking going on. There was a lot of barking. Somebody's trying to call me here. There's a lot. Can you hear me still?
I can.
Someone was trying to call me.
Yeah, I can hear
you. Okay. So I need to get a new phone because now I can't hear you. But what I was saying is, so there's a lot of barking going on, but yet, though there was a lot of barking going on, I got to bark along with them. And they were so kind and generous with me. I was at the food court by myself, and I had Albert's debit card. I had forgotten the PIN number, and of course he could not hear the phone. And therefore I was stuck there like, how do I I was like, oh my gosh, and I was just having my head down. I was really trying to remember, and this fella just came around here, take this, how much is it? I got it, don't worry about it. So if this guy's watching the show, I gave him my business card to look me up. That was going to be on the show. Thank you. I really appreciate that. For you to come out of nowhere and made that offer. That was such a genuine gift. I appreciate that. We really appreciate that of showing of what Cleveland Brown fans look like, which is generosity. So thank you. Yeah. So you can hear me fine, right?
I can, yes.
Okay, so let's talk about, I wish my daughter would stop calling me. So Facebook, I'm sure, are working on having Facebook Live on laptop, so this won't happen.
All in good time.
So let's talk about your story about when you had cancer back in 2007. I noticed on your website how you were in gratitude for those dark times, for who you are. And you already probably spoken a lot of it already. So just how can you connect that, what you were sharing about being a full expression, which I'm pretty sure that's what you're connecting
Sure.
with making that discovery when you was going through that?
Well, Elba, it's my story. And what I always try to remind people is that my story is really no different than anybody else's story. It's Einstein says, I want to know the thoughts of God. Everything else is just detail. And so when I think about my story, used to, I was very possessive of it. Like it was mine. And, with a name like AmiLynne, all one word, capital A, capital L, I literally have people in my life that when they introduce me to someone new, they will say to them, don't call her Amy, it's AmiLynne. Because there was at a time in my life where my name was my identity. My name was something that I could hold on to. I knew it. It was a fact. It needed to be expressed properly. And it was something that I could control. Before I was diagnosed with cancer, I was absolute extreme type A personality. I was a control freak. I cannot, even now, even though I'm only a few years removed from that, I can't imagine living with myself because everything had a place and everything needed to be in its place. And if it wasn't, I was not the kindest of people in expressing that things needed to be handled differently. Didn't always choose the kind path, rarely chose the kind path in that regard. And so when I was diagnosed, at first it was just another challenge. You deal with it. I consider myself to be an academic, more so then than now. And that was important to me. I wanted to understand the diagnosis. I wanted to understand the treatment process. I wanted to be engaged and active and a participant in that. And as time went on, after multiple rounds of chemo and radiation, and the doctors call me in and they say to me, there's nothing more we can do for you. So was encouraged to actually apply for experimental programs within the oncology realm. And I was accepted to one down in Mayo Clinic, and that's why I moved from Indiana to Florida. And at one point they, after an extended period, they came in and they said to me, it's now working. And essentially they said to me, you really need to go home. And if you don't already have your affairs in order, this is time. I was given 4 to 6 weeks. And I'd already kind of begun my spiritual journey through part of this. And my spiritual journey is one such that, I was raised in a Christian household. I was raised with what I consider in my own experience now to be radical beliefs, evangelical Christian. And I'm grateful for them. While I don't feel like they apply to my experience now, they carried me through to where I could get to a point finally in my life where I could live a little bolder, meaning I could learn to ask some questions. I could better understand why I believed the things I believed. And, there are lots of circumstances in our life. It's not just a death sentence, if you will, from a doctor. There are challenges that we come up against each and every day in our experience. Divorce, custody challenges, loss of a job, dealing with a difficult boss, road rage, an unkind person at the grocery store. In my opinion, none of those experiences are any greater or less than in value or experience than any of the others. Because in the moment, if we're present in that moment, when someone is unkind to us, it hurts. What we do with that hurt is what differentiates us from the next guy. And I used to internalize that hurt. And it's like, it's going to make me stronger and I'm going to be a bulldog and nobody's ever going to hurt me again. And I put these walls up, I had walls up that would, rival, the wall of China. And I thought I was doing that to protect myself. However, I woke up 3 days after this doctor's appointment. I literally woke up and I said, well, that's his opinion. And not that I don't value his opinion, this doctor who has said to me that my time is near and that they've done everything that they can, but that it's an opinion. It's human expressing their best understanding of my human experience. I wonder if I asked God what God would say about what's in store for me. And so literally for the first time in my life, 10 years ago, 11 years, 12 years ago, whatever the time frame is now, I literally began to question absolutely every belief I had ever had. I began with questioning the belief that my father was a jerk. I mean, how many of us grow up with parents that we never connected with and that we felt like were overbearing or too strict or whatever the labels are that we put on it? And it's like, well, what would my life be like if I didn't believe that he was a jerk? I'm getting ready to die. My dad has already passed on. Doctors are telling me I'm going to die. Do I want to die hating my father? Well, no, not really. That doesn't feel very good. Well, what's it going to take? Well, what it takes is asking the hard questions. What is it that I hate about him? And do I really hate, or do I just misunderstand what I'm feeling? And I need to find the compassion in it. And at that point, I'm 34 years old. And I mean, candidly, I didn't go to my father's funeral when he passed away. And he'd passed away 20 years prior to that. Didn't like the man, didn't care for the man, what I learned was through this process of digging deeper is it's not that I didn't like him. It's not that I hated him. It is that I did not understand him.
Yes.
And when I began to understand him, and not by asking a bunch of questions from a bunch of different people, but by really digging deep and putting myself in his shoes, can I find a time in my life where I was really controlling of another human being? Are you kidding me? I was type A personality. I tried to control everybody around me. So what I was learning is that those qualities that I said I hated about him are the ones that I adapted and held the tightest to. I was a jerk to people when they didn't do what I thought they should do. And I've made my amends and I've expressed my apologies where appropriate since learning this. But here's the thing. It's not that he was a bad person. It's that I misunderstood his life experience. And now I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for the rigidness that he demonstrated in his life. I'm grateful for the strictness. And I see now that his adherence faith-wise to this, what I now don't ascribe to as far as faith background, I don't ascribe to those beliefs, but he worked to instill those beliefs in me because he loved me. Not because he was trying to control me, not because he wanted a certain outcome, but because he loved me and he felt that that was right. So if I can see where his sense of right might be different from my sense of right, I can still see his sense of right as being correct for him. And now we come back to this conversation of and versus or. And because we're inclusive, we're returning everything back to God, source. We have innocence, we have purity, we don't have blame or responsibility. So for all these years, I'd harbored these bitter, harsh, really ugly feelings towards my father. Do I think in some regards that manifests into the physical sense of cancer? I do. I believe that our thoughts are manifest into our physical experience. So as I began to work through these feelings with my dad, and I didn't go see a therapist, really dug into my spiritual journey. And that spiritual journey was just as questioning as my physical human journey was. I questioned every belief that I had ever had about God and Jesus and the Bible and the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas. It's like question it all. Matter of fact, the spiritual texts tell us to question it all. It doesn't say, take my word for it, I'm right. But we're encouraged to question. And the purpose of encouraging question is so that we can experience and not just talk about. You know, I go back to that
Yeah.
quote from John F. Kennedy Jr. The highest appreciation is not to utter the words. It's not to recite the doctrine. It's not to be caught up in vain repetition at church, but to live by them, to feel them and to express them. And so when I think about those dark times, you know, according to doctors, you know, 11 years ago, my time had ended. And here's the thing, they are so correct. I am so grateful for their declaration about their belief of what my life was at that time, because what it did was it gave me the impetus, the invitation that I needed to figure out what my life really was.
Mm.
And so 11 years later, yes, I've got challenges in my life. I'm dealing with some health stuff now, and I don't dismiss that because I recognize the lessons I learned earlier. Just one of those was learning to understand my father better, even as he'd already passed on. People don't have to be here for us to reconcile our thoughts and our understandings of our
Yeah.
relationships. We just have to be willing to get real about what the experience really was and to recognize that we can see it differently than they did, and it doesn't make it wrong. So at the end of the day,
And
you're
it
just
goes
so
right back to,
gratitude.
yeah, it really goes right back to that where we were talking about the letting go and the surrender. You know, like what you know, you let go of that and you surrender to return, let go of that thing and have it return to source and just
Exactly.
give you more space. And it's like you said, like 11 years later, you have new challenges that you're experiencing right now. You know,
And I'm
physical
kicking their tush too.
limitations. I'm sorry?
And I'm kicking their tush too. The new
Yes,
challenges. You know,
yes.
we just do.
Th-
It's you
Yeah,
wake up with
right.
gratitude every day.
Every day. And it just creates, and it just creates more and more space to experience more, to be in that full expression of source. And
Right.
source to everyone looks different. So
Yeah.
that's so good.
Well, and Elba, as we talk about this, you know, I'm encouraged. I want to leave your listeners and us, you know, because we're no different. Our journey is no different than anybody else's. We're still figuring it all out. So, you know, to leave us all with this question of, you know, I think one of the big components in the world right now is the thought of terrorism and war and evil. And how does gratitude play into a world where evil would seem to exist? And so there are thought processes, in my opinion, that say, well, not my opinion, there are thought processes that say, you know, just separate the person from the behavior. The person is not their behavior. You know, the person is not representative of their activity. And then there are others that say they absolutely are. You know, you can't separate the person from their behavior. And I'll just give you a quick example of how I'm learning to find compassion and gratitude in a space where it would seem that evil could be so overwhelming. So let's take the idea of a terrorist, for example. It's a big word, it's a scary word. It's a word that would be seemingly fraught with what we would call evil. It's all black, it's
Yeah.
all dark, it's a shadow word. So I began to ask myself, okay, what are the qualities of a terrorist? They're controlling. They believe that their ideals are the only ideals, and they are willing to sacrifice reputation and oftentimes their physical being in order to prove that their belief is right.
Mm.
So controlling, a hierarchy on what's good or bad, what's right or wrong, they've got the right answer, and a willingness to sacrifice for all at all ends. So I had to ask myself the question, is there ever been a time in my life where I was controlling? So take the word out of the
No, it's
conversation for a minute. Is there ever a time in my life when I was controlling? Oh my gosh, I spent my 20s and 30s controlling people. Are you kidding me? Absolutely. Is there a time when I was so certain that my way was the only right way that I then acted in ways that weren't compassionate, that weren't loving, that weren't inclusive. Well, we just talked about my 20s and 30s. So yeah, absolutely. And was I willing to sacrifice the thing that was most important and most valuable in our experience? And I had to think about that one. That one took me a little bit longer. But when I realized what I was doing was sacrificing my identity as God's expression, because God
Yeah.
expresses love. Oh my gosh, I'm controlling, I think I'm right, and I'm willing to sacrifice my identity as God's child to impose my thought on someone else. I have been a terrorist in people's lives. I may not have used physical bombs, artillery, but I used words, which are almost more painful, which are direct hits and affects more people. And so then I was able to be grateful for this exercise of exploring this idea of putting a person in this idea of the terrorist and recognizing that in my own way, I won't speak for anybody else, but in my own way, I had exhibited those qualities and those characteristics that I had attributed to these people that I call terrorists. So the compassion comes back because I can recognize that they're at a different place. If they knew differently, they would do differently. And here's the thing, it's not about knowing better. Better is an ego judgment. Well, if you knew better, you'd do better. But if
Right.
you know differently, you would do differently.
Yeah.
And so I can find a place in my heart where if the individual who's shooting, and I come from a military family, I've lost 3 people to service in the military. So I speak from experience. From a military standpoint, when you're talking about terrorists, if they knew differently, they would do differently. It's how they were raised. It's their upbringing. It's what they're taught. It's their highest sense of right in this moment.
Yeah.
Their action, though, cannot separate any of us from our identity as God's expression.
Yeah.
And so we can be grateful, not for their behavior, but for the hope of their soul, the hope of their experience and their expression, that they are a child of God, no matter where they reside, no matter where they are on their journey. We've all been there, and we all just get to walk each other home. Little compassion, little love, and a bucket load of gratitude.
Yeah. You know, as you're talking, I can see, that reminds me of the song. What's the song? Well, it just passed me by, but it reminds me back of my heart's desire is to be a mirror for folks to see what I see in them. And really, what you're telling me, what I'm hearing you say is I get to be a full expression of God's love. And when they see that expression of God's love, not me,
Right. You're just the
not
vessel.
me, Elba
We're the
Colón,
vessel.
but see the full expression of God, then they'll know differently.
That's how we see the face of God. We see the face of God when someone offers an act of kindness. You know, the Bible tells
Say
us
that one more
others,
time.
we see the face of God when others show us kindness or love or compassion. All of the spiritual texts talk about the unknowableness of God. And from a human standpoint, that's true. If we're looking at life from an egoic perspective, we cannot know God because ego is way too big and way too powerful and way too controlling. But if we look to the actions of others, when I look to an Elba Colón and I see the mirror, the reflection of her mirror, and that's when I get to see the face of God. It's that kindness and the compassion and the love. And see, what we get to do then is we need to make sure our mirrors are spotless. That's our task. Our task is not to judge another. Our task is not to hate. Our task is not to control or to determine whether someone else's behavior is good or bad. My job is to make sure that my Windex bottle is full, my cleaning cloth is ready to go, and that I am mindful to every smudge and every smear on the mirror, my vessel, so that as God's light is shining through, it is an accurate representation, an accurate reflection of spirit and source to those around me.
And that's where gratitude plays a role. Because last week when I was interviewing this lady who does a meditation podcast, she was saying how when we meditate, it's a tool, a channel for life energy force to come through that brings us to our natural state of being. And she was saying that that natural state of being is gratitude.
Yeah.
And here you are saying the same thing, you know, saying it differently, but just a little bit deeper, being a full expression of love. And that comes through being gratitude, creating that space, letting go, surrendering, and just be in gratitude, creating more space, being gratitude, to be a full expression of love.
Recognizing our identity as God's expression is the first step. Because if we think we're the mirror, here's the thing, if we think we're the mirror, then we're misunderstanding our purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we recognize that we're nothing more than the reflection, which means we're not source.
Right.
Well, what's source? That's God. It takes away guilt. It takes away, blame. It takes away, it restores innocence. And
Yes.
Innocence and gratitude are playground mates, I
Yes.
mean, in that space of innocence, gratitude cannot help but be present.
Say that one more time. Gratitude cannot help but
be present. In a place of innocence, when innocence is present, when we recognize the presence of innocence, innocence is always present. God is always present. But when we recognize it, when we get ego out of the way, we go sit it in the corner for a few minutes, we see that innocence, gratitude can't help but be in that moment. Those are the moments that we express gratitude for. Oh, there was such this purity and there's such this innocence. It was beauty. That's when, and we have a million words for it, beauty, gratitude, creativity. That's when gratitude comes through, is when we are recognizing our identity as the expression of God, not needing to earn anything, not needing to prove anything, not needing to be anything other than what we were created to be, and that is a vessel for love and truth and compassion and gratitude.
Amen, sister. We just had church.
Amen.
Amen.
Who needs a building? Who needs a building?
It's already 3:00, 3:08 here in Eastern time. Like I can go on and on and on, or maybe do part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5.
Yes.
Because you have so much to share. And I just, but you know what? You have your Realization Academy. So I'm sure as people are watching this, they're loving this. So please, I'm going to put on after the show, AmiLynne, I am going to put on your website so more people can come to your website, sign up. She does have a podcast show also. They can find you on Instagram. So please, because this is not enough. So guys, like and share this so more people can hear what AmiLynne is sharing, that we get to be a full expression of love to the world. So with that being said, we're going to wrap this up.
A closing thought as we wrap it up is, when we hear something that resonates with us, it's coming from inside. It resonates with us because we know it's true to our identity. So if you've heard anything today that resonates with you, reach out to Elba, reach out to myself, because we're here just walking each other home, and truth cannot help but find itself. And for that, we can all be grateful, because that's how we all get home. Whatever home means, wherever it's at, whatever it is, that's what it means. So thank you for having me. I love sharing these ideas with you and talking about conversations of consequence. things that are important. And I look forward to watching and listening to your radio show on Fridays moving forward too, love. Thank you.
Oh gosh. I still have 3 questions. They'll be
Yes.
real quick to
Sure.
wrap it up. And it's 3 questions I ask everyone. So the first 2, I'll just ask, and then the third one I'll explain,
Okay.
and then we'll wrap it up there. So AmiLynne, what are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for this moment and recognizing that darkness is a label. Darkness is a misunderstanding of what is really happening. And I'm so deeply grateful that I can see that now. So when challenges present themselves, I get to really celebrate the idea of peeling back the veil and seeing what's really going on. And I get to do that in this moment because I'm present in this moment and learning from those lessons as I move forward.
Wow. So you're grateful for this moment, and that darkness is the label, but you can pull the veil back and you can really see what's really going on. It's not necessarily as dark as it might look to the world or to us, but when we pull back, be present, we can see more, right? And
The
discover
moon
more.
resides in a dark chasm. The moon resides in a dark chasm. And when it positions itself through gravity and other physical, attributes, it begins to reflect the sun. And then we get to see the beauty of that reflection as we see the earth, as we see the reflection of the moon. So darkness is a misunderstanding. Darkness doesn't exist. Darkness is the shadow. It is the misunderstanding of light. And with that thought, dude, everything's doable because I don't have an excuse to be afraid. I don't have an excuse to not understand. I get to look for the light.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so here's the third question. The question is, what does that affirm about who you are? Which we kind of already talked about it, but and what I mean by who you are, so people have daily affirmations, from maybe doing law of attraction or personal self-development. They'll say, I'm love, I'm joy, I'm happy, I'm this and that. Um, what does that affirm about who you are for that blessing that you are receiving for being grateful for?
I think the affirmation, what that affirms for me, Elba, is it's not who I am, it's what I am. Who would suggest that I'm separate from God, that I'm some sort of entity separate? Because who has its own identity? What is my true identity? I am God's expression. I'm not an individual. I'm an individual expression of God. But as if I recognize, if I can come back in those moments that would seem dark, and then you peel the layers of the onion back and you see the light, that affirmation for me would be, I am God's expression. I am truth. Or if you would see it on my website, my kind of tagline is, I am truth, capital T, which means it's from the divine, freshly discovered in the now of being. Because what I know now is different than what I knew 5 minutes ago, and it's different from what I'll know 5 minutes from now. So I am truth, freshly discovered in the now of being. That gives me hope. It gives me excitement. It makes me grateful for this now moment to be able to just celebrate it. I'm truth, freshly discovered in the now of being. That would be my affirmation.
Wow. AmiLynne, I am so humble by
Oh,
this whole
likewise, sister.
conversation. I am
Likewise.
so humble. Like, yeah, I am so humbled by this conversation we're having today. I want to thank you so much for coming on board. I knew this show was going to be good. I knew through the technical difficulties, this show, I don't know what it is. Well, leave it at that.
Yeah.
Thank
Much
you.
love
Thank
to
you
you.
so much. I appreciate you. Um,
Likewise.
I'll post everything, your information, so more people can reach out to you. And
Sounds great.
thank you. Let's give the world a kiss on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Mwah!
Bye-bye, sweetie.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye,
Bye,
AmiLynne. I'll be
everybody.
talking to you soon again here. Love
Sounds
you,
great.
everybody. Remember, everyone, like and share this show. The world gets to be inspired and get to connect with their identity, with what they are, and that is to be a full expression of love. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.